Good afternoon, students. We are back for the lesson in geography. We are still dealing with urban hierarchies. As I always stress before we start a lesson, these lessons are sponsored by VT Africa together with their subsidiaries. So let's just revisit the table of contents that we looked at yesterday. We are looking at the concepts of urban hierarchy, central place, threshold population, sphere of influence and range of goods, lower and higher order functions and services, and lower and higher order centers. So yesterday we had our lesson and we ended on looking at the hierarchy here, where you are looking at isolated dwelling, hamlet, village, small town, large town, city, and then the conurbation. And we did an activity. We are not going to deal with that activity again. Then we want to look at this, the central place. What is a central place? It is a town that is providing goods and services to smaller towns and settlements around it. It provides a range of higher order goods and services than those in the smaller surrounding towns. So we also looked at Christeller's central place theory, which explains the distribution of towns, which looks at, which is Christeller's central place theory, which explains the distribution of towns and cities according to three contributing factors. The central place theory explains why there are smaller towns than there are big cities. So we also want to now look at this slide here, which is looking at the concept of a threshold population. The threshold population is the minimum number of people in the surrounding area of a central place that is needed to support its function for it to remain profitable. So profitability here is actually the main issue. So different threshold populations require different types of goods and services. These range from lower to higher order services. Urban hierarchies, let's look at the concept of sphere of influence. The sphere of influence is the surrounding area that is served by a range of goods and services provided by an urban settlement. This is the area from which an urban area gets its customers and is known as the market area. I remember looking at this slide yesterday. Then let's look at these functions, the order of functions and services. At the bottom here, we do have a hierarchy, and at the bottom we've got what we call the law order. And when you talk of the law order, you are talking of the services that are accessible to many people. So these are often visited many times or every day during the week or during the day. The West got spaza shops, post offices, shebens, and pubs. Then the middle order, you have got supermarkets and restaurants. And then the high order, we've got the department stores, hospitals, cinemas, and leisure centers. Then let's look at these central places, which are classified into lower and higher order centers according to the order level of goods and services they provide to their sphere of influence. We have low order here, which is a hamlet, village, town. Then they increase in size. So increase in size, in functions, order of services, threshold population, sphere of influence, range of goods. And they become high order, that is central place becomes high order, which is now the metropolis, the conurbation, that's now at high order. So when it is in high order, we have got few people per area. So that's where the difference is. When it is low order, we've got more people per area. So when you look at this, as it is moving towards high order, you find that the number of people who are using the services increases. Let's move ahead. Now we want to look at these lower order centers and the high order centers and categorize them into two and see what are their differences and what are their similarities. Now we want to look at lower order centers. They are close together and serve smaller areas, whereas high order centers are further apart and serve larger areas. An example is when you look at spaza shops in townships, there are many spaza shops in a township. Whereas if you look at malls and supermarkets, they are far apart and in larger areas. So you find that maybe there is a mall. Let's talk of examples of maybe Soweto. You have got a mall in Protea Glen. You have got another over a wide area. You have got another in Protea Gardens. You have Jabulani Mall. You have got Maponya. They are far from each other. So whereas the spaza shops are almost in every street corner. Provide the lower order, provide only lower order goods and services and few functions. Whereas the higher order provide both lower and higher order goods and specialist services, that is multiple functions. Then the lower order is also deals with small sphere of influence. It has got a small sphere of influence, whereas the higher order has got the large sphere of influence. So the area from which the people are coming to get the services also differs between the lower order and the higher order. Then let's look at the following. It is also the lower order is also has a low population threshold, whilst the higher order has got a high population threshold. The lower order has got a small range of goods, whereas higher order has got a large range of goods. Lower order also supply only to surrounding areas. That is, maybe in a street, people in the street are the ones who are buying from a spaza. They are the ones who are maybe patronizing at a shebeen in that area. And people must travel to higher order centers to obtain higher order goods and services. But when people want to buy from maybe a liquor store, they now have to travel to a mall or to go to town or somewhere else. Then the higher order, they supply to settlements and attract people from further away. Then we want to look at this according to Walter Christoller. You find that the place theory, central places of the same order are spaced the same distance apart from each other at every point in a regular pattern. Each central place has its own sphere of influence in which the threshold population is found. So this diagram here actually helps to explain that. There are more lower order central places in an area than higher order central places. So when you look at this diagram, you'll find that there are more villages, which are lower order, followed by market towns, which are fewer than the villages. Then you have got towns which are fewer than the town markets, and the city is only here, which is actually offering the higher order service. So this can help explain the Christoller's central place theory. So I just want this to zoom so that we can actually look at it closely. So this is the explanation here. You find that there are many villages and hamlets, followed by market centers in blue. And then we do have towns, that is the small towns that are in orange. And then the city is the red one, which is only a single one there. So we have got many lower order centers. Then we are now looking at the lower order and higher order centers and how they relate to each other. Then you look at this is the second order center, this one, as you can see it. Then the third order center, as you can see it here. So you find that the third order center has got a larger sphere of influence, whereas the second order has got a lower sphere of influence. So these are the boundaries that are showing the market where it ends, where the sphere of influence ends. So the first order is this boundary, the second order is this dotted line, then the third order has got a thick line. As you can see, that's a much larger sphere of influence than the two lower order combined. So the first central places are here. The small dot is indicating the first order. And then the second is indicating the second order, and the third is indicating the third order, which is, as you can see, the differences in the sizes of the dots that are put there. So there are fewer third orders, and there are more first order and second order. So that means we have got more small towns and less cities that are providing the more complicated services. I'm not sure if we covered this yesterday, but this is just an assessment that we are just doing here to cover, to see if we really understood what we did yesterday. So the dash is the minimum number of people in the surrounding area of a central place needed to support its function for it to remain profitable. What is the answer here? It is the minimum number of people in the surrounding area of a central place needed to support function for it to remain profitable. Let's check. It is C, which is the threshold population. I had my assessment here, but right, we are going to, then we have a game that we did yesterday. We are not going to touch on that. We are just going to look at the other slides that we didn't look at. So on this one, we are just concluding on the lesson that we started yesterday. Now we want to go to the lesson that we have to do today. And this lesson is going to be, let's open it now, which is on rural and urban we're going to look at rural and urban structures. Let's wait while our lesson is opening. We just have to be patient. The board is a bit slow. Right, here we are. So our vocabulary today is going to be higher central place, higher order centers, sphere of influence. It seems it is opened. Let me check. It looks like it opened the very lesson that we did. What is wrong with this board now? Let's go to lesson 14. There is something wrong here. You just need to go to lesson 14 and it's opening the wrong page. Right. There we are. It's opening. Right, we are going to Right, this is our next lesson, which is rural and urban settlement structures. We're looking at urban structures and patterns. So let's look at the vocabulary that we have to look at today. We have got words that are here, and when you click on the word, you get the definition. We've got aesthetic, centrifugal forces, monotonous, morphology, and so forth. So let's look at the contents that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the internal structure and patterns of urban settlements, models of urban structures, changing urban patterns and land use in South African cities. Sorry for the time wasted when opening these pages. Now we want to look at what is meant by internal structure and patterns of urban settlements. All urban settlements, as we know, are made of different internal structures and patterns. So the urban patterns can be influenced by the relief of the area and can also indicate the age of the town. So you will find that the pattern of Johannesburg or the pattern of any other city cannot be the same when you look at those old areas which were constructed, especially during the colonial days or when the city was being established. So we've got what we call the downtown of the city, and then we've got the modern buildings that are built, that have been built later on. Street patterns are used to describe a town. However, each pattern has its advantage and disadvantages. Most common street patterns are grid, So we've got grid, then we've got the unplanned irregular, we've got planar irregular, and we've got radial. So these are the four most common street patterns that we find in cities. So this picture here helps us to see another type of street pattern that we can have. So as you can see there, here you can see that we've got some sort of a street pattern that we have here, which is actually linear, is it? You can see that the buildings are actually arranged towards the streets, and then the yards will be at the back. So this is another, but as you can see, you can also see that these buildings somehow, if you come to the park here, they are also somehow built around the park. So I don't know what if you can look at this, what pattern according to those patterns that we gave there, what is the pattern that you can actually ascribe to this that is on the picture? To me, it seems like this is actually planar irregular. Because as you can see here, you see some buildings are actually following the streets, but when you come here, you find that there are no buildings. So this is actually either the planar irregular or the unplanned irregular. Let's look at these urban structures and patterns, internal structure and patterns of urban settlements. Let's look at the grid. Streets intersect at right angles, forming rectangular blocks associated with older cities, commonly found pattern. Advantages: simple layout. The advantages, we have got a simple layout, easy to expand, easy to find places, efficient and shorter routes. Then we have disadvantages. It is monotonous, the monotonous layout, limited expansion methods, many intersections, traffic congestion, aesthetically unpleasant. The planned irregular, planned streets, but no set pattern, like what I was trying to explain there, found in hilly areas in modern cities and newer suburbs developed to accommodate relief. Streets don't link up, few intersections and many curves. Advantages: quieter streets, fewer intersections, less traffic congestion, interesting layout, aesthetically pleasing, accommodates the nature of the topography. Then on our disadvantages: easy to get lost, difficult to subdivide or expand, longer travel distances. I'm getting lost here on the page where we were. It was here. Right. Then we are looking at what we call the unplanned irregular. Unplanned streets with haphazard or no pattern, associated with third world towns or informal settlements. Advantages: easy to expand, interesting pattern, aesthetically pleasing. Disadvantages: easy to get lost, traffic congestion, haphazard pattern and no order. So when you look at this, you find that there are no straight streets, which is actually in contrast with the one that I was trying to define here. So this one, when we come back to this one, we have got streets and intersections, is it? Which actually mean this one falls under it doesn't fall under radius. As you can see, that radial is actually different from that. This actually falls under grid, as you can see. We've got streets intersect at right angles, forming rectangular blocks associated with older cities commonly found pattern, and a simple layout, which means there is order and you can't get lost so easily. Then when we look at unplanned irregular, you find that, as I said earlier on, there are no straight streets here, and everything seems to be haphazard. When you come to radial, streets radiate outward from a central point, found in towns where important buildings are in the center of the town. So this is very important. Important buildings are in the center of the town. And so you find that all roads will be leading to that important center. And I think that can be one of the reasons why they're saying all roads lead to Rome could have actually been formed, because Rome was the administrative capital of the Roman Empire. So all roads will actually lead to Rome and out. Advantages: fewer intersections, ease traffic flow, easy to find important buildings, aesthetically pleasing. Disadvantages: complicated pattern, easy to get lost. Unplanned growth can create traffic problems. Then we want to look at cities, how they are divided into land use zones. We have commercial, we have industrial, and we have residential. Those are the three zones where the cities are divided. So on the commercial, we have got the regional CBD, which is central business district. So we have regional CBD, which is the transition zone. And then land zones in urban settlements refer to the layout of the urban structure and are classified according to their function. The industrial, we have got heavy and light industries. And residential, we have got planned industrial estates, dormitory townships. Then we have informal settlements. Then we also go on to have the low income residential, middle income residential, high income residential. And while we are still on the residential, we find that we have got recreational areas like parks, and then we have rural urban fringe, where the cities actually touch with the urban. You find that usually there are places like plots and so forth. Then this forms the buffer zone. Then we have what we call the green belt, where mostly it will be agriculture that is practiced there. Let's go on to look at further land use zones and explain now what is actually the central business district, what that we said the CBD in the previous slide. It is actually found in the city center or in the center of the city. It is it has got a high urban profile where we find the tallest buildings. We find the highest building density. We find the highest land values, high accessibility. We find mixed services, but dominated by commercial functions. Major concentration of shops, offices, and businesses. Mixed service zone, but dominated by commercial functions. High and low order functions are also found in the city center. Then we want to look at the regional CBD, which develops outside the main CBD area. It attracts businesses, shops, and offices from the CBD. High land values, isolated store clusters, commercial ribbon developments, planned neighborhood and regional shopping centers. So when you want to give examples here, which examples can we give in cities like Johannesburg? You find that we may talk of places where there are regional CBDs that are sprouting around. We talk of places like Vereeniging. We can talk of places like talk about Benoni, you talk about Centurion, you talk about Midrand and so forth. So these are the areas that are actually out of the main CBD, and they are actually attracting businesses and shop offices from the CBD. Then land use zones, we want to look at transition zone. It is around and just outside the CBD, the zone of change, also known as the zone of decay. Mixed functions. So it is the zone of decay as well. And the other thing is you can call it the zone of change. There are mixed functions, many dilapidated buildings. Buildings are taken over by developers or other functions and renovated. Land values are still high. Zone of mixed and changing land use, for example, residential becoming commercial or vice versa. Which places can we put there? Maybe we may talk of places around Johannesburg which are not far from Johannesburg, like the outskirts of Johannesburg and the outskirts of any city that has been developing for maybe over 100 years. You find that those areas that are surrounding, usually they are dilapidated, and you find that many people, developers are buying those areas, and if they were residential, they are being converted to commercial and so forth. Let's look at light industrial areas. These are mostly found in the transition zone or in planned industrial estates, close to road transport, very important. This is raw material transportation, manufactures light industrial products, little noise and air pollution. It can be close to residential areas. So because it has got no noise or air pollution, that means it can be situated next to where people are staying. Then let's look at heavy, found on the outskirts of the CBD, close to major transport routes. Major to transport routes. Manufactures major industrial products away from the residential areas. Cheap land values, large areas needed for large buildings. Low income housing may be found nearby. Causes heavy and noise pollution. Needs flat and to be close to a water source. So these are where most of the pollution is happening, as you can see in this. As we can all see in this picture here, you can see there are fumes of industrial smoke there towering in the sky. So this is an example of a heavy industrial site. It cannot be situated near the residential areas or on the windward direction of the residential areas. Planned industrial estates. These are found near railway lines or roads on the outskirts of the city. They are usually built on low-cost land. So the accessibility to transport is very important. So these are areas where industrial estates are positioned. Maybe some of the workers and management and so forth are actually staying in those areas. Then we have dormitory townships. The dormitory township, this is where the low-skilled workers are staying, are living, and they are found in areas where people lived while working in the mines or factories during apartheid era. People work in a nearby city, has since developed into diverse residential areas, for example, Soweto. So these are areas where the workers who are working in these mines and are staying, and now they have been upgraded somehow into decent houses and so forth. So example has been given here. We've got Soweto, we've got areas like Alexandra, we've got areas like Tembisa. So these are the townships that are being referred to here. Then let's look at informal settlements, which are found on the city outskirts, usually along transport routes, range from illegal, that is no service, is offered for the illegal one. So we have got the illegal, where there is no service, to legal settlements with limited or no basic service delivery. Then we want to look, they also range from non-permanent to permanent dwellings. Non-permanent dwellings made from any found materials such as plastic, wood, zinc, high building density, poverty levels, crime rates, no space available for recreational activities in those informal settlements. Low income. The low income housing is found close to the CBD or other regional commercial or industrial areas, close to the workplace and public transport. Small similar looking houses built close together on small areas of land, high building density. RGP housing provided by government, basic service delivery, little space available for recreational activities. Then we have the middle income. In between low and high income, found in the suburbs between CBD and the outskirts of the city, close to schools and regional shopping centers, medium-sized stand-alone houses or townhouse complexes, building, medium building density, good service delivery and facilities, including recreational areas. So these ones, you may give an example. We may give an example of places like Mondio, areas around Southgate and so forth. You find that that's where you find these middle income houses. Then high income, found away from the CBD and industrial zones, found near parks and rural urban fringe, private transportation and easy access to highways and other major transportation routes, large and expensive properties, unique architectural designs, low building density could be found in golf estates. Then we have what we call the recreational areas. The recreational areas are those areas where people go for leisure and so forth, found in open areas without buildings, set aside to be used for public gardens, parks, and reserves. Residents of the area use these areas for recreation, such as public swimming pools, zoos, parks, tourist attractions, and golf courses. Area has many trees and lawns to help clean the air, calm traffic, and reduce noise levels. Then let's look at the rural-urban fringe. Forms the boundary between rural and urban areas, makes land use with both urban and rural functions. Land use changes from rural to urban as a city expands. Land is less developed. Cheaper and land allows for large properties, plots, and small holdings. Then we look at the buffer zone. As it is self-explanatory, this term actually means it is the area between the city and the rural area, found near open spaces, railways, or rivers, used during the apartheid era to separate previously white settlements from black settlements. So it is actually separating the areas, the poor areas and the rich areas. only found in South Africa because of apartheid urban planning. Green belts. These are areas where there are parks, conservation areas, no buildings. Preservation of natural vegetation in urban areas. Areas of natural vegetation that are preserved in the urban area. It reduces ecological footprint. Learners, we just want to have a refresher before we move to the next slides. So this is going to be a refresher course that we're going to have, and then we are going to attempt to have some 1 or 2 questions before we end the lesson, and then we'll continue with the same lesson tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. I know the time zones may be different depending on where you are getting our lesson from. We need to look at this game, which is our smart lab. We want to learn while playing. So this is on land use zones and the functions and land use. So we want to look at this and see if we can match up the different terms that are given underneath here. Land use zone, is transportation a land use zone or it is a function? Transportation. Let's remove the ink here. Right, transportation, where are you? It is not a land use. Transportation. Then it has been taken. Housing is a it has been accepted on function. Then what is education? I don't know what will happen to my sound. There must be a sound here. Then we have undeveloped land. It's refused. Yes. And then education. Then we do have residential. Industrial. Activities, enjoyment. Residential. Commercial. Highways and roads. Refused. Then we have to. Then activities for enjoyment. Then we have business. Refused again. It has to be function or land use. Open space. It has to be land use. Then recreation. It is a land use zone. Manufacturing is a function and land use. Then school, function and land use. So that's the end of our game. Let's skip these and just go to do some 1 or 2 questions here. Let's look at our question 1, which is here. Planned streets, but no set pattern. Streets don't link up, few intersections and many curves. What is being described there? What is the type of settlement there? What is the type of urban pattern? For those who have attempted, we have got planned irregular. So this is planned irregular. That's the description here. And if we go up here to our definitions, let's look for the definition here. Unfortunately, we don't have the definition on this one. Planned irregular, but on our slides that we dealt with before, we have the definition of planned irregular. We've got this one. Unplanned irregular, let's look at planned irregular. Yes, this is it. And then we have planned streets, but no set pattern as it is described there in the question. Let's go back to there. It was our question number 1, is it? Then we have, this was this. Let's go to another question. Streets radiate outward from a central point found in towns where important buildings are in the center of the town. It is radial. Is that not it? Let's see if we are correct here. Yes, D, that is radial. Learners, we are going to meet tomorrow at 10, as time is not our best ally. But tomorrow we are going to have a formal assessment that we are going to do using what we call the smart response. So tomorrow we are going to connect, and then we do that lesson together and have fun while learning. So we are going to have a practical lesson that we are going to have, the practical assessment that we are going to have. Thank you very much for being good learners and a good audience. Please keep studying. The examinations are just around the corner.